Daf Kufnan Vav Amud Beis, 3 lines from the top. We discussed previously that Rav held Ein Mazel Yisrael, that even though something appears in the Mazel, in the astrology, but for Yisrael, it's not inevitable. It can be changed through mitzvahs, Ma'asim Tovim, Tefillas, it can be changed. Zok the Gemara, Shmuel Nami Ein Mazel Yisrael. And we see from the following that Shmuel also holds Ein Mazel Yisrael. The Shmuel v'Avlet Havayase. Once Shmuel and Avlet were sitting together. So Avlet was somebody who was a baki in astrology. And some people were going to the swamp to cut reeds from the swamp. Avlet said to Shmuel, he said, this man will go but not come back. He'll be killed. A snake will bite him and he'll die. Shmuel said to Avlet, if he's a yid, then he'll be able to come back. So while they were still sitting together, the man went and he came back. Come Avlet Shadalatuna. So Avlet, who saw that this man was going to die, so he went and he took off the load that the person was carrying. He saw that there was a snake that was cut in two. Meaning, when the person was cutting the reeds, there was a snake that was going to bite him and going to kill him. And that's what Avlet saw in the astrology. But the man killed the snake. Shmuel, my Avdas, what mitzvah did you do that saved you from this gzer, from this misa? He said, every day the workers, they would come together, they would gather together and make a collection for their meal and collect a bread and for the food for their meal. So they would pass a basket around, everybody would contribute and put something in the basket, and then they would all eat together. They'd have this communal kind of meal. But today, but today, he saw that one of the members over there, he didn't have anything to contribute to the meal, to put in the basket. And he was getting embarrassed. So he told the rest of the members, the rest of the chevra, so he said, he said, I'm going to do the collection, I'm going to collect the bread today. When he reached that person, he made it appear like he was taking something from him. So he bent down, made it appear like he was taking something from the person to put in the basket. And so that the other people would assume that this other member contributed. So they won't get embarrassed. And he put the bread from his own pocket, he put into the basket. So he made it look like he was collecting from this other person, but he himself contributed on his behalf. And the other people didn't realize. So he saved this person from this busha, from this embarrassment. Shmuel said, he told the mitzvah of this, you did a mitzvah. Nafak Shmuel Darish. Shmuel went out with Darish. It's tzedakah. What tzedakah tatzal memavas. That tzedakah, that giving tzedakah, charity, is tatzal memavas, saves one from misa. And not only does it save a person from an unusual death, meaning that he will die, but he won't die an unusual death, a grotesque death, he'll die a natural death. No, what it means is it'll save him from dying. Marsha points out that Baba Basra, it's mashma that tzedakah tatzal memavis is from an unusual death. So Marsha explains as follows. If a person's time has come, his time is for Misa, if he's about tzedakah, so it will save him from an unusual death. He'll die a Misa Yofa, a natural death, a Misa Yofa. If, however, it's not his time to die, but because of Xera, because of Averis, etc., he would now be facing Misa. There, the tzedakah saves him not only from an unusual death, it saves him from Misa itself. From Misa itself, it saves him. So like the Gemara with Rabbi Kiva, Nami and Mazal Yisrael. We see from this Maisa also from Rabbi Kiva that ain't Mazal Yisrael, that the Mazal is not inevitable. The Rabbi Kiva Havalei Bat, he had a daughter, Amrle Kaldoi. The astrologer said, the day that she goes into her Beis Yichud, by the day of the Chasana, when she goes into her Beis Yichud, Tarak Lechivra Misa, she'll be bitten by a snake and die. Havadoiga Milsatua, or Rabbi was very worried about it. So the day of her Chasana, his daughter took her pin, took her brooch, and Datsta Beguda, she stuck it into the wall. And it happened she stuck it into the wall, and that's where the snake was, and she stuck it into its eye. Litzafra Kika Shaklala, in the morning she took out her pin, Havakasara Chivra Basra, and the snake was attached to it. So with that Maisa, there was a snake. It was going to kill her. But with that Maisa, putting this in the wall, she saved herself and killed the snake. Amalei Avua, her father said to her, Kiva said, My Avda, what mitzvah did you do that saved you from this Misa? Amalei, she said to him, Bepanya Asanya Karabav. In the afternoon, and Ani came, he was knocking on the door. Everyone was busy preparing the Suda for the Chassan. And nobody heard him knocking on the door. So Kaimna, but she heard it. She wasn't preparing the chasa. She heard it came there. They obviously. So she said, I took the portion of food that was given to me, that you give to me, and I gave it to the ani. I gave it to him. Rabbi Kiva said, mitzvah, that you did a mitzvah. Nafik Rabbi Kiva Darish, it said, Daka, Tatzal Mimavis. That tzedakah saves one from Misa V'loy Memisa Mishuna, not only from an unusual death, Ela Memisa Atzma. Umidar Rav Nachman by Yisrael Nami in Mazal Yisrael. We see from the following Maisa that also that in Mazal Yisrael, the Umidar Rav Nachman by Yisrael Amalek Kaldoi, the astrologer said to her, Breach Gandvahava, said that your son will be a Ganav. Loi Shavska Giloi Resha. So she was very concerned about it, and she did not allow him, even as a young child, when even some of the other young children used to have their head uncovered, but she did not have his head uncovered. Always covered his head. Amrle, she said, Kase Resha, cover your head, Ki Hechet is Havelach Emsa de Shemayim, so that you'll have Yirah Shemayim. So she was always makbid that his head should be covered. Umoy Rachme, and daven to Hashem, and ask for Rachmim. So be down to Hashem that the Yetzer Hara should not overpower you. So he didn't understand exactly why she was telling this to him. Yom Echad, one day, Yosef Igaris to Dikla, he was learning under a tree. Nafal Glima Malviresha, and the covering on his head fell off his head. Dole Eina, he lifted up his eyes. Chaza Ladikla, he saw a palm tree and there was dates growing from the tree. Alma Yitzre, his Yetzer Hara overpowered him. Solek Paska Likibura Bishina, he went up and he cut off the cluster of the dates with his teeth. His Yetzer Hara was so powerful that it was overpowered him to the extent that he climbed the tree. It didn't belong to him. It was Geneva, and he cut it off. He bit it off. So really, he had this inclination. What was shown from the astrologers that he had this inclination for Geneva, but they were able to control it with tefillas and with doing ma'asim of Yirah Shamayim, covering his head. So in Mazal Yisrael, yes, that was the inclination. But through mitzvahs, ma'asim tayvim, and tefillas, etc., one can overcome it, and it is not inevitable. So the Mishnah, one can cut up cucumbers or gourds in front of an animal, and a nevela, you can cut it up for dogs to eat. You can cut it up on Shabbos. You can cut up these things on Shabbos for the behemoths to eat. It's food for the animals, so it's mutter. But Rabbi Yehuda says no. Im loy haisa nevela me'erev Shabbos asura. He says if it wasn't an avela from before Shabbos, it's also levi she'ein min hamuchen. It's not considered prepared. Now, the general principle is that something that's meant for human consumption is meant for humans. It's not going to be given to animals. So a behema that's not an avela before Shabbos, that is meant to be, this designation is for people, for humans. So it's not prepared, it's not muchan for klovin. Food, melons, cucumbers, gourds that are usable and edible for humans, people normally would eat it. You don't throw it to the dogs. So it's not normally set aside for animals. So Reb Shimon, we'll see in the Gemara, the machlokes, we have the general machlokes between Reb Shimon and Reb Yehuda on the scope of muksa. According to Reb Shimon, he's more mekel in muksa, so therefore he holds that unless something was set aside for a purpose that's not permitted on Shabbos, unless it was set aside for something that a person can't use on Shabbos, it's otherwise it's not muksa. It's only muksa if it was designated, set aside for a purpose that's not mutar on Shabbos. But Rabbi Yehuda says no, it's not muksa if it was set aside, if it was designated for a non-permitted use. In order to be mutar, it has to be miyuchad for a permitted use. So now we have the case over here. We have this animal on the onset of Shabbos. It was designated for humans. Something that's designated for humans, it's not designated for animals. It would be considered muksa for animals. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's muksa because it's not designated for animals, it's for humans. So it's not prepared for animals. It's not muchan for animals, so it's muksa. But according to Rav Shimon, it's not muksa. He says, therefore, even though on the onset of Shabbos, it was designated, it was set aside for human consumption, the luim, the animal, it was set aside for human consumption. It only on Shabbos, now for whatever reason, it became an avela, or for whatever reason now you want to use it for animals, it's not muksa. It's not muksa because it could have been used for people, and therefore the fact that it wasn't prepared for animals doesn't make it muksa. So that's the basic machlokes and Rabbi Yehuda and Rav Shimon. So zok the Gemara itmar oral shacha siman. Amar Ula halach Rabbi Yehuda. Ula says the halach is like Rabbi Yehuda lagabi muksa. So therefore, in the cases of the Mishnah, it's also. O Shmuel Amar halach Rav Shimon. Shmuel says no, the halach like Rav Shimon, and therefore it's mutar. Va'af Rav savar halach Rabbi Yehuda. And Rav also, we see that he holds that halach is like Rabbi Yehuda. From the case of the mast, a ship's mast. So these masts are used to cover the merchandise, to cover the cargo. So therefore, these masts are used for schayra. It's not mutar, they're not used normally for a Shabbosdik purpose. Now they could be used, but normally they're not used. The Rav also, Ushmul Shari. Rav says it's also because he holds like Rabbi Yehuda, that it wasn't designated for permitted use for Shabbos, so therefore it's muksa. But Shmuel says it's mutar like Rav Shimon. It wasn't designated for a Shabbosdik purpose, but it could be used for a Shabbosdik purpose, and therefore it's mutar. Tosfos asks, well, why does Ula have to say that? He says, Amar Ula halach Rabbi Yehuda. Shmuel Omar that Shmuel Omar halach Rav Shimon. So why do we need this memra that Shmuel Ula says halach Rabbi Yehuda and Shmuel says halach Rav Shimon? Why do we need this for? Then Shmuel already told us. We see from this mice of the Karkei de Zuzeh. We see from here also that he says clearly that Shmuel Shari. Shmuel says it's mutar. So why does Shmuel, in both places, make mention that the halach is like Rav Shimon? When he has a machlokes with Rav on the Karkei de Zuzeh, he says that Shmuel says it's mutar. So apparently he holds like Rav Shimon. Why does we have to say over here also when he argues with Ula, why does he have to also now make mention and say the halach is like Rav Shimon? L'cher, we know that already. So Taisus answers that there's degrees of muksa. There's varying degrees of muksa. And therefore, he says that over there, like the karcha de zuzah, it's a lesser degree of muksa than it is over here. Over here, the designation of muksa, it would be more chomer, there would be more of a reason to say that, in this case over here, that it's muksa. What is set aside for the humans is really not going to be used for an animal. There's more of a reason to say that this is muksa than it is in the case of the karcha lezuzah, which you have these mats which are easily usable for other purposes. It happens to be that it's covering up this cargo, this merchandise, this chayra, which is not a Shabbosdik purpose, but it can easily be used for this other purpose. But when you cut up something that is for human consumption, it's a waste to cut it up for animals. Animals don't need such an expensive item. So there's more of a reason to say you're mekatza das, that you're putting it aside and you're not going to use it for Shabbos. There's more of a reason to say it's muksa. So therefore, in both places, that's why Shmuel says, nevertheless, the halacha is like Rosh Shimon as mutter. V'af Levi savar halach to Rabbi Yehuda. Levi also holds halachas like Rabbi Yehuda. Ki hada Levi ki Masechet treifos lekam b'yom tova. The case is when they brought a treif to him, a paskan on an animal, on Yontiv. It was the animal they shechted and they wanted to see if it's treif or not. Lo hava chazalei, he didn't inspect it, ela ki yasav akel kalisa, only if he was sitting on a garbage dump. Why? Domra dilma lo miskash, because he's thought, and he had as far to say, well, perhaps he's going to inspect it and it'll turn out to be treif. And now if it's treif, it can't be used for humans. They can't eat it. And now since on the onset of Shabbos, it was roy, on the onset of Shabbos, roy for humans, and now that you shecht, it's not, we see that it cannot be used for humans, it can't be used for the klavim either. Because the Chayra apparently holds like Rav Yehuda. Then it's muksa, because on the onset of Shabbos, its designation status was that it was mukhan for Adam, for Bnei Adam. And now if he inspects it and he sees that it's a treif, that it's treifa, it can't be used for humans. And he held that it can't be used for animals either, because since on the onset of Shabbos, it's mukhan la'adam, it can't be used, it's not mukhan l'klavim, so it's muksa, so you can't move it. So therefore, he only inspected it on the garbage dump, that if it did turn out to be a treif, they would just leave it there, they wouldn't have to move it, and he wouldn't have to be a tal to the muksa. So you see that he holds that the law is like Rav Yehuda.